I'm sure lots of you watching know exactly what this is. It's a standard British telephone from the 1960s and 70s. I've had this one in storage for years and I thought it'd be interesting to try and get it working. Hello? What do you mean it won't work on fibre? Let's find out. If you grew up in the UK in the 50s, 60s or 70s, you'll probably recognise this. It's a very standard British telephone from that period. It's called the 706 model. There was a later one called the 743. They look very similar. There was some slight differences here around this area here, but basically this was the only phone you could get in the UK for quite some time, and you would rent this from the GPO, the General Post Office. They would come and fit it, they'd permanently wire it into your house, assuming you had a phone line, and you would then rent this from them. So very British way of doing things. It changed in the late 70s, I think about 1980, where BT, as it became British Telecom, introduced these plugs, and you could buy phones then and have a socket in your house fitted, and you could plug your own phones in and buy your own phones. I think you could still rent them for a period as well, but most people started to buy phones, and that, you know, there were push button phones then, there were all sorts of innovations. You know, you could get a Snoopy phone if you wanted to, but this was a standard thing for quite a long time. You may also recognise this. This was the junction box that would quite often be mounted on the skirting board in the hallway of a house, and the phone line would come into this from outside, and then the GPO would connect your phone to this, and quite often you'd only have one phone. When I grew up, actually, in the early 70s, I think we still had a party line, so we had one phone line coming into two houses, and you had to, you know, you could pick up the phone and hear somebody else on the phone, your neighbour on the phone, if you both picked them up at the same time. It was a way of basically getting more phones into houses, but not having to run cables to every house. That pretty much died out in the 70s. So I bought this. It is not, won't work on a modern line, mainly because obviously there's no connection to a modern phone socket. So what I'm going to do is fit this modern cable, and I want to keep this junction box. This is called, I think, a BT30. It's got 3 terminals. There was also a BT52 which had 4 terminals. I want to wire this into here so I can keep this just kind of historical interest, really. It all needs cleaning, but we'll get into that in a bit. There are lots of different variations of how these things were wired, and there are some amazing websites available. I'll put links in the description. If you did want to rewire or use one of these phones with a modern line, then you kind of, it gets really confusing. This, as you can see, has 3 wires going to it. BT or the GPO changed to 2 wires, so the 3rd wire here is for the bell ringing current. They changed to 2 wires, and the bell ringing current just came over one of the speech wires, I think in the late 70s. And this phone, I think, has been modified so that the bell and the speech are commoned up, because you've only got 2 wires coming in from the exchange. So I think that's been modified, but nothing has been changed inside. So if we look at the inside, and to open these, you just remove these 2 screws here, or loosen these 2 screws here. On later models, they just had 1 screw at the back, and that then allows you to lift. If you lift it up at the back, it comes off, and you can remove the case, and that reveals the beauty of this one. So This is an early model 706. It's all wired. The later one, 706, I can't remember which version, but it had a PCB. This one is wired. I think this is from the early 60s. Actually, I did look. So it's a 706L. CWL is the factory that made it. I think that is somewhere up in I don't know, Norfolk or something like that. And then 62.1, so that's 1962. I think that may be the month. I'm not totally sure, but anyway, it's definitely a 1962 model. You see, it says GPO. I don't know why a lot of them or all of them seem to say batch sampled. Don't know why. And then 7014, that stamp. GPO is General Post Office, who were the forerunner to British Telecom. So it's 1962 model. I think, as I say, these came out in 58 or 59 originally, and then I think around 1963, 64 they changed to printed circuit board. So this, as you can see, they all have 19 terminals here, and that allows you to use it with a branch exchange or as an extension. You can disconnect the bell. There are all sorts of different variations. So the wiring gets quite confusing. But you can see here the red, white and green coming in from the junction box are going to separate terminals. So I think what they did when this was fitted with a two wires from the exchange, they left this in the phone and just commoned up the white and green in the junction box, I think. So I think this will work. I don't think I need to change anything here, but we'll see. I may be wrong on that because it does get quite complicated. What I do need to do though is a couple of modifications. So this is called a rectifier element, and these were fitted from I think about 1961-ish. I don't know why this phone doesn't have one. And these go between those two terminals there, 1 and 2. And these are designed to prevent acoustic shock, as the GPO called it. Basically, loud noises in the earpiece, kind of unpleasantly loud, from, I think, voltage spikes and things like that. These are basically just two diodes back to back in opposite directions to limit the voltage, I guess, across the earpiece. So these should have been retrofitted. This phone hasn't got one, so I'm going to fit that between terminals 1 and 2. And then the other modification I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to make, the bells here, if you can hear them, are mechanical. So there's a hammer that moves between the two. The impedance of these, I think, originally was about 1K or 700 ohms. They later models moved to being about 4 kilo ohms, 4,000 ohms, so that you could have more phones, so you could have extensions and they could all ring. Basically, I think it's just the amount of current that could be drawn from the phone line. Again, if you grew up in that sort of period, you might remember there was a number called REN, or ringing equivalent number, which basically you could have up to 4 REN on one phone line. And that basically was, I think, how much current the phone would draw. So basically what I need to do is put a 3.3K resistor in series with the bell, so that it makes it about 4K, 4 kilo ohms, and that should then ring, I think. On a 2-wire cable from the exchange, you need to have what's called a ringing capacitor, and the socket that I've got to connect this to has a ringing capacitor in it. It's basically a way of, I think, triggering the ringing when you haven't got a separate bell wire. So anyway, we'll get into that in a bit. So what I'm going to do is just take this apart a bit. I'm going to clean it all. I may polish the case a little bit. I mean, it's not in bad condition. It does have some scratches, but I may just try and polish it a little bit. Give it all a clean and a wash, and especially the handset, and then we'll get into modifying the wiring. So one important thing to note, and I don't know why this is still there anyway. It says, warning, do not leave a window edge, use extractor number 29 or turn screwdriver number 1 under this pip, and there's an arrow pointing there, from below the finger plate. So what would go here is a little piece of paper or card that had an emergency number on, so 999 in the UK, and it would also show you your phone number. I don't know if it was common, but I always remember my parents would always answer the phone by saying the town and the number, and there were only 4-digit numbers until I think some point in the 70s. So we would actually, you'd pick up the phone and say, hello, town 2934 or whatever the number is, and it would be written or printed here. So what you don't want to do, this is just a plastic cover. You don't want to, what this is saying is you don't want to prise it from the side. What you do is you put a screwdriver, should pop out. There you go. And then I can remove that, and I can replace this spring, which I've just knocked out. All right, quick update. I just figured out what that spring is. So this is the finger plate, and all that spring does is go there to hold the finger plate on, and then that goes on top. So yeah, I haven't broken it. That's meant to come off. Okay, so I have taken the case apart and cleaned everything, giving it all really good clean. Took all this apart, cleaned inside, and it came up pretty well. There was a lot of paint on this junction box, but I've scraped that off and given it a bit of a polish, and the main casing as well, which is here. It's not perfect, it's still got a few marks on it, but I wasn't really looking to make it look perfect, just to kind of tidy it up a bit. So what I did was I've polished everything with cutting compound, which is just car polish, and a drill with a foam pad on, and that works pretty well. I used that on the turntable lid, and it works really well. You can, you know, one little bit I used 1200 grit wet and dry to get a really deep scratch out, or fairly deep scratch out, and then just polished it with the compound. I could have done more. It's not perfect, but it's fine. I'm not after perfection, just make it look presentable. So that's all good. The junction box had a chip, a corner missing. I could buy a new one, but I'm not that bothered about it. So what I used was Sugru, which is like a plastic putty, and you can mould it, and within, I don't know, 12 hours or so it sets, and it's very slightly rubbery when it sets, so it doesn't set hard. It's really good for repairing plastic. You can see that corner there. It's going to be visible, but I just thought I would do it because I've got some Sugru. So I really recommend Sugru for fixing plastic parts. As I say, it doesn't set hard. It's not like epoxy mastic. It's got a slight bendiness and rubberiness to it, but that works really well, and it seems to stick really well to plastic as well. So I just fixed that. I polished that as well, and as I say, got rid of all the paint. That's come up quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now, if I just move those bits, I'm just going to fit the diodes, or whatever it's called, between terminals 1 and 2. Let me just turn this around. And also fit a 3.3k resistor with the bell. So just let me get those bits together, and then I'll show you where those two bits go. Alright, got 3k3 resistor, or 3300 ohm resistor. It's a little bit bigger than I need. I think it's a 0.5 watt. The GPO recommended. This is, I think, a 2 watt, but that will be fine. What's really great with these old phones is that you can get all of these original GPO diagrams. So this is for this phone, 706, and it shows basically all the terminals and how to wire them. Obviously these were before the modern plug and sockets, so you have to account for that, but it's really useful to be able to see how the everything's wired. So the resistor goes between T4 and T5. So on the phones, that is terminal 1. It's actually marked with a 1, and there's 9 in that row. Then that's terminal 10 up to 19. So the resistor goes between T4 and T5. So this is the bell here. So it adds resistance to make the bell basically about 4k resistance. So I'm going to put the remove that link and put the resistor between T4 and T5 there, and the rectifier element goes between T1 and T2. Is not actually shown, I think, on here, T1 and T2, but anyway, that's where it goes, basically across the earpiece. And there's the microphone. Yeah, so there's T2 there and T1, so it's going across the microphone, sorry, the earpiece there, the speaker. That's the microphone there. So it's going to basically go across in parallel with the receiver. So pretty simple. I won't show that. I'm just going to sort the wiring out, do that, and then after that I'm going to wire this plug on to the junction box, and we can test the phone out, see if it works. Okay, so that's done. So really simple. That's the rectifier, and then there's the resistor. Couldn't be much simpler. So I think what I need to do now is reassemble the dial and the case, and then wire up the plug. There we go. So next is to put this back, and then this, I think, only has 2 wires going to it. Let's just, no, it's got 4. Okay, let's try and strip it very thin. There you go. That's 4 wires in there. Horrible wire. It's like plastic. Anyway, so I only need 2 of those. I think the red and the green, and then I'll just put that back together. Okay, so it's basically pins 2 and 5 on this connector, 1 and 6 aren't used, they're reserved for something, never got used, I guess. So it's 2 and 5 that are the line A and line B. So they are the 2 incoming phone wires. So very thin cable. It is actually copper, it bends okay, but it's like a plastic sheath or insulator, which is horrible, not very flexible. So I'm going to try and put some really small, rather than just screw under there, I'm going to try and put some small ring terminals on, see if I can do it that way. But it's going to be a bit of a fiddle. They're not going to crimp, certainly, if you see how thin those wires are. I'm going to try and solder something on. And these were the things that go in the centre of the dial. So as you saw, that's what came with the phone. I assume, I guess that got left in from the factory. And these were what would go in there, and you can see it says dial 999 for fire, police and ambulance. Obviously phones were quite new to people, so they wasn't obvious that, I mean, in the UK 999 is the emergency number, a bit like 911 in the US. So yeah, you had to tell people what to do, and 100 was for the operator, and then down here would be written, it'd be like, in my case, like Marlow and then the phone number, either written or I have seen some typed. I don't know if that was normal or whether the engineer who came to install it would just write it on there. Anyhow, so these came with the phone. The chap who sold me the phone sent me these. I've only ever seen the black one. I don't know whether grey was standard, and then I've never seen this one before. I'm not sure what that's for. I'll have a look online, see if I can find out. Anyway, the different variations, but all basically the same, telling you how to dial emergency service, and then space for your phone number under there. Right, so let's get on and try and terminate this. There we go. So pretty easy. What I need to do is just figure out some way of doing some sort of strain relief on this, because this would normally be screwed to a wall or a skirting board, and then these cables would be clipped. Obviously, well, I'm not going to install it that way. It's going to be flying lead. So just need to figure out some way to do that, and then we will test this and see what happens. Obviously, I'm going to have to test it with the Polster DTMF module as well, which is here. I've been playing around with different connections because although the Virgin fibre router has a phone output, and it does support analog phones, and I think it also apparently supports ringing, it doesn't support pulse dialing. So these phones, they dial, when you dial a 1, it basically kind of disconnects and reconnects the circuit one time. If you dial 0, it'll do it 10 times really quickly. So this is called pulse dialing. Modern equipment doesn't support pulse dialing. It's DTMF or touch tone. So I'm going to have to fiddle with that a little bit, that converter, but we won't be able to dial, but we can see if we can get ringtone, and also if I can dial into this and see if it rings. So we'll try that, then we'll fiddle around with the pulse to DTMF converter. Alright, so this is a bit of a weird view, but I've had to put the phone near the internet router. So this is Virgin Fibre Broadband. I think it's marketed as about 350 megabits per second, I think, but it's fibre to the connection point on the outside wall of the house. and then it's coax into the router. So surprising. Well, this has phone connection. It's got two telephone sockets on the back of the router. So obviously you could connect a modern phone and it should work. What's going to be really interesting to see is what happens with a 1962 phone being plugged into that. You can ignore these. These are just part of the house internet. I can't really remove them. So what I need to do is plug the phone into these. These are RJ11 connections. And so what I've bought is this just on Amazon. I think it was like £3. This converts the RJ11 connection to standard British Telecom phone socket. This has a ringing capacitor in it, which is important if you want the phone to ring, because on a two-wire system you need that capacitor to be able to separate out the ringing current. It doesn't have the third wire coming into the house that it used to have. So it's got a ringing capacitor built in, supposedly. So what I just need to do, I'll plug it into socket 1, and then we've got the wire from our junction box here that I just wired up. This is a standard BT socket, so that goes into there. So I think there's three things that I want to check. First is, do we get dial tone? Then if I call, does it ring? Well, actually there's four things. So first one is dial tone. Second one is, does it ring? Third one is, do we have audio when I call it? So can I speak and be heard? And then the fourth one, which I'm not expecting at all, is that we can dial out from this. As I say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to need the pulse to DTMF converter to convert the pulses, which are the little clicking noises that the dial makes, to modern tone dialing. This lasted a long time. It's 10 pulses per second. So if you dial a 0, you get 10 clicks. If you dial a 1, you get 1 click or pulse. And it was the way of signalling to the old Strowger telephone exchanges. Basically, they'd move, if you dial a 0, it would go up 10 positions. So, mechanical telephone exchanges which don't exist anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm not expecting anything to happen on the dialing, but let's see. So first thing is, and I haven't tried this, it's a bit awkward because the camera's in the way, but I will try and hold my microphone up so that you can hear what's going on. First thing is, do we get a dial tone? So drum roll. Yes, we do. If you can hear that, we've got dial tone. All right, that's a good start. Yeah, so it cuts out when you drop the handset back on the top. Okay, well that's good. So next thing is ringing. So if I'm just going to call from my mobile. I won't show you my number. I'm dialing now. There you go. It's ringing. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I've got audio as well. Let's see if I can. Right, I'm now speaking into my phone, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear that through the earpiece. So I'm holding it to the microphone. Anyway, so we've got speech. All right, so we've got dial tone, we've got ringing in, and we've got speech. So just out of interest, let's see what happens if I do try and dial out. It'll be interesting to see how the router kind of handles that. So I have got my phone, my mobile phone, so I'm just going to dial the number. All right, and this last number. It's ringing. 1 2 1 2. Wow. I have no idea why that's working. So I can dial out using pulse dialing. That's crazy. All right, I'm going to do a bit of research on that because I really wasn't expecting that to work. Well, so there we go. We've got a 1962 telephone working with a 2020 router with fibre coming into the house and then being converted to coax. So I'm assuming this is doing all of the interpretation. Well, there you go. I'm a little bit surprised, to say the least, that works with phone dialing. I don't know if they all do, but as you saw, this one does. I mean, I'd forgotten how long it takes to dial an 11-digit number on a rotary dial. You get so used to just clicking something in, quick dial on your phone, but it works. So we've got all 4 things working now. We've got dial tone, can ring into it, we've got speech, and I can dial out from it. So that's basically everything working. All right, just to wrap this video up, I've done a bit of searching on the internet, and it seems a few people have reported that loop disconnect or pulse dialing works on Virgin Media. Others say it doesn't work. So it seems to vary by area, which makes me think maybe it depends that Virgin are basically outputting pulse or loop disconnect dialing to the local exchange, and then it depends on how modern the local exchange is. I think that's more likely than Virgin equipment working differently in different areas, because that's going to be a lot more modern. I don't know. If anyone knows, it'd be very interesting to know. Well, for me anyway. But anyway, for now, I'm going to enjoy calling people as if it's 1962. See you in the next video.